Hi, I'm Christopher Scott, and welcome to the Kid and Friends podcast. Today, my guest is Fay Inger. Did I say that right?
Mhm.
Fay Inger. She's an energy reader, a psychic, a medium, and a remote viewer. After a major turning point in 2021, she launched Solar Flow to help people break through personal blind spots and understand the unseen forces shaping their lives. She's got a no nonsense approach to energy work, covering everything from reincarnation and mediumship to true crime and psychology behind human behavior. She brings some wild insights and stories, so get ready for a conversation that goes beyond the surface. Faye, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. That was an incredible introduction.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you do me tremendous justice. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. In 2021 you had some sort of a transformation, but did you always know that you had some sort of abilities before 2021?
I did, and I tried about 40 years to suppress them because they scared me. And I
Did
didn't.
they scare you, or were you worried about being judged by others? A
Both.
little bit of both. Okay.
Absolutely both. So first and foremost, I started to manifest my gifts and abilities when I was 4 years old. This is like in the early 1980s. So there was no
Sure.
Google that our parents could consult. So the first time I had seen something that was paranormal, my brothers didn't get it. And then I had a really monumental event happen when I was 4 years old, when I saw what I think the closest thing I would describe them to would be spirits.
Okay.
I saw like translucent people walking across my mother's front yard. And I was sitting on
Wow.
the steps
Was it
outside the house. Yeah, it's
evening?
freaky. I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the steps outside. My mom is sitting on the step behind me. And I turned to her and I said, "Who are those people that are not people that are walking across the yard?" So she looks, she doesn't see
Doesn't
anything.
see it.
She's
Right.
like, "There's nobody there."
Yeah.
So that was like the first really, really big introduction, which I didn't know until about 40 years late. Well, maybe not 40, maybe about 38 years later, um, is actually mediumship. And that's when somebody has
Yeah.
the ability to see and make contact with spirits because they kind of hang out. There's a
Yeah.
misconception that when somebody's body dies, their soul just goes up to heaven. It's not always
Right.
the case. Sometimes they do, sometimes they stick around. And in,
Sure.
in the case of those two spirits that I saw walking across the yard, they were actually one of the original homeowners from the house that my mom had bought and that we were living in. And they kind of
Okay.
to come around and just keep an eye on the house. So sometimes
Wow.
they would like walk the yard and just like look at
Yeah.
the property, and sometimes they'd come into the house.
And so you saw them more than once.
Yes.
It was a regular thing. Did they acknowledge you back?
Nope.
Okay. So they're doing their thing and they're not aware of you.
I wouldn't say that they weren't aware. I would just say that the current people that were in the house were not really of interest to them. The house itself
Okay.
and the property was. So I would kind of say they were attached to the house that they had lived in and to the property.
And
And
it's not your house, it's the next house over?
no, we were living in their house. They were like, let's
Oh,
say,
okay.
I don't know if they were the original homeowners or if they were the
Gotcha.
second people that had owned the house, but they were attached to the house. So
Wow.
they didn't care like who actually lived there. They just like to
Sure.
walk around the property and keep an eye on it. And sometimes, like, I remember going into the basement of the house and I was always creeped out before I knew why I was creeped out. And it's because
Yeah.
they sometimes were downstairs in the basement.
And were you scared of them, or did you become familiar with them enough that you knew they weren't going to harm you in any way?
So, first of all, they can't because they don't have a body.
Sure.
So the threat of actually being hurt by a spirit is non-existent. But
Right. But as a 4-year-old, you don't know that.
no, of course not. But I always was kind of like, that spidey sense that you can feel, like if somebody's
Yeah.
looking at you or like the hair stands up on your. So
Yes.
whenever a spirit is
Like when you're
around,
driving down the road and you
yeah,
just happen to look at the other person at the same time they look at
yeah,
them, or they look at you. Yeah.
that okay. So that is what happens whenever there's a spirit around. Like I don't know if everybody feels it, but for
Right.
me, certainly, if there's a spirit around, like I can feel it in my body when they're around. So
Okay.
I would always feel creeped out because I had that sensation in my body when I was in the basement
Yeah.
and they were in the basement. But
Okay.
they really didn't pay attention to us. They didn't pay attention to my mom. They didn't pay attention to me. They just felt a sense of attachment to the house, so they let
Sure.
me keep an eye on it.
Wow. And so how many years did you see them? Was it the entire time you lived in that house?
On and off.
And did anyone else in the family see them? You said you had two brothers?
I have three brothers, and they're
Okay.
gifted to varying degrees. I wouldn't quite say that anyone else in the family has mediumship. I actually think two of my brothers, if they knew the full extent of what I was doing, they would say that I'm out of my mind. And I'm okay with that
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's like try explaining color to a blind person. Just because
Impossible.
you can't see it doesn't make it any less real. So
Right.
I know that just because I have these gifts and abilities and they don't, it doesn't make it any less real.
No, not at all. And it's interesting because I've met a lot of people that have some form of ability or another, and usually they're not aware that they have it and they're not completely tapped into it. So for somebody who doesn't quite know what they have to believe that someone else has something, that's a little bit kind of a far fetch for a lot of people.
I love that you brought that up because in the work that I do, I hear from so many people that they had like a similar event that happened to them when they were young, where they
Hmm.
got so freaked out and so scared by the event that happened to them that they actively would suppress it. But some of them remember it. They know exactly what it
Yeah.
is. But they just it was so traumatic for them that they never wanted to like deal with it again.
Right. And it's kind of along that same lines where, you start sharing it with other people. Like, for example, when I was 21, I came home from the Navy and my grandmother had been sick for about a year and a half and didn't tell me. And all my cousins and everybody, and my mom, my aunts and uncles, everybody knew. She made me dinner and went to the hospital the next day.
Oh wow.
Right? She literally waited for me to come home to spend some time with me, and then she had throat cancer. Like a week goes by, and she's in the hospital, and everybody goes to visit her. And I'm dumb, I'm young, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just go tomorrow. And my entire family went, except for myself and one of my brothers. And while they were at the hospital, she had asked everyone to leave the room for a minute. And when they left, she passed. And I found out about it, and I was definitely upset about it. But like I understood, and things happen. But that night, I'm laying in bed, and every time I ever tell this story to people, they get a little like they're like, "Oh, it's bullshit." I'm laying in bed, and I have the only bedroom in the house that's on the ground floor, like downstairs. It's a split level house. I'm
Mhm.
laying in bed, and I feel the bed compress next to me. And I look over, and it's my grandmother laying on the bed next to me, but just facing the ceiling. I have a
Wow.
I have a full conversation with her about my Aunt Lisa who got killed in a drunk driving accident. She was a bit of a wild one. I'm like, did Aunt Lisa get her wings yet? She's like, no, not yet. And I'm like, what does everyone look like in heaven? She's like, everyone looks like how they looked on their best day on earth. And I had a full conversation with her, said goodbye to her. I felt the bed, I guess, uncompressed. I'm not sure what term to use on that one. And the next morning, like, figure my mom's mom died the night before. I said to my mom, I said, Grandmom came and saw me last night. And she didn't even hesitate believing me for 2 seconds. And I went through the whole story and she just thought it was great. But anytime I've ever told that story to someone, they're like, oh no, you didn't, something's wrong with you. That didn't happen. I'm like, you have no idea. It was real to me. And that's the only part that matters of that conversation.
Yeah. I think that's so relatable. And that's why so many people that are gifted, either because they're scared and they suppress it, or they don't want
Yeah.
to be labeled as crazy. And I think society has unfortunately done a really good job of labeling highly gifted people crazy. Because it's like if you hear a voice, which is actually somebody that has the gift and ability of being clairaudient, they're told that they're schizophrenic and there's a
Right.
pill for that. If somebody could, commune with God, they're told they're schizophrenic. So highly gifted
Sure.
people that actually have these abilities and embrace them are labeled as having some sort of a mental disorder. And unfortunately, that's not always the case.
No, I'm sure there are some people that are crazy, but there's a lot of people that I know that are very, very normal that have some sort of interaction or experience with something they can't explain?
I would actually say everybody does.
Okay.
Because what's been shown to me, or the things that I have seen when I'm in meditation, is all of our souls are contracted to have some gifts and abilities to varying degrees. However, we don't all embrace them, and we don't all agree to wake up to them and
Sure.
agree to experience them. But you know, you're highly gifted. It sounds like you're a medium too. If you had that experience with your grandmother, so I'm curious if you have an experience that happened similar to that when you were younger, because gifts and abilities don't usually manifest for the first time in our
You
20s.
know what? There's probably stuff that I'm not remembering. Like I can think of times where like I thought I saw someone and then that person turned around and like for example, I'll take my grandmother as another example. I've seen her almost every year since she passed. Like
Mm,
out in public, made eye contact with literally somebody like 2 feet away, and I look at them and it's her. And I
mm,
walk away and I look back and that person will look back at me. We didn't have any conversation or anything. They'll look back at me and it's whatever that person normally looks like. It's not her. And
wild.
I'm like, that's interesting. And maybe it's just to remind me of who she was.
Mm,
And like I have 1111 as a tattoo on my one arm. That was my grandfather's number. So whenever 1111 pops up every day, like I can tell you what time it is.
wow.
It's yeah, it's just the tiny little things that might make me look like might be a little bit off, and I am a little bit off, I guess. But I embrace it and I'm okay with it. Like it's not something I flaunt and I run around and tell everybody about. But when stuff happens, I accept it for what it is. I don't try to dismiss it in any way.
I love that. We need more of that. Hey, what are you drinking there?
It's just water, ice
Oh,
water.
it looked
But
like it was in a beer can. Not that I have anything against beer, but
no, I don't drink. I definitely I'm a cannabis guy and I microdose on a regular basis. But the part for me when I'm having these things, like I'll just I'll let you know where I'm at, like spiritually. I went to Catholic school as a kid. And they tell you what to believe, and they tell you this is this and that's that. And I got to a point where I was just like, you know what, I don't believe that. And then I got to a point where I was like, you know what, when you die, that's it. And I was stuck in that mode for a few years. And then somewhere in the last 2 3 years, I'm in a place where I believe that you know our soul is continues on no matter what happens. Like we don't dissipate and that's the end. Like I had a conversation with this like the past life regressions guy a few weeks ago, and we talked about your soul being a tree, and the leaves on the tree are the different multiverses that your soul might be in. It's not your whole soul; it's just a portion of it, and all those are interconnected to the one soul in the middle. And then we talked about soul families, and like what your soulmate is. It's not the person you love; it's the soul that you're most connected to. So I've had a lot of interesting conversations. So when you reached out the other day, I'm like, yes, I want to talk to her. We're gonna have a good conversation.
so I'm curious what kind of what was the initial kickoff point over the last couple of years that led you to going down this more spiritual path?
I stopped drinking.
That'll
Right.
be good. Yep.
On New Year's Eve, one of my friends called me and he was having some issues, and I went over there. And it turns out he decided to do LSD on Christmas Eve for some reason, and I was like, terrible idea. He's home by himself, but I said, hey, let's watch a movie. And we're watching Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. And there's a line in the movie that says, a distracted soul will never grow. Alcohol was a distraction. They call it spirits for a reason. I've done some research on it. It's just designed to distract your spirit. The phone, all those things. And when I stopped drinking, for whatever reason, I all of a sudden had some clarity. And I wasn't like wasn't, I mean, I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but I was drinking on a regular basis more than I should. I wasn't getting in any trouble. I wasn't causing any problems, but it was just like during COVID,
Mhm.
just heading down that route. And then once I took that away, my brain just opened up and I was like, okay, now I'm seeing all these things and I'm believing things differently than I did before. And I'm more open to things that I wasn't open before.
So it's so interesting that you say that, because I would say maybe three, I don't even Here's the thing. I have a feeling this happened to a lot of people, but over COVID, like my sense of time, it just it's never gone back to normal.
Yeah.
I don't actually know when this was, but somewhere along my spiritual journey, I stopped drinking wine, and I was more of like a social drinker, but as soon as I stopped drinking wine, a lot more of my gifts and abilities actually started to come in at that time, because I
Wow.
realized it is a distraction, but it also kind of like it numbs out our neural receptors in our
Yes.
brain, and it blocks us from embracing so many more gifts and abilities that can actually come in.
Yeah. The less the more the best way to put it, when I stopped drinking, the more deeper I got into not drinking, the more
Mm.
in tune with myself I became,
Yep.
which is
So
interesting because like, and I never knew I was out of tune. That was the problem.
most people don't.
Right.
So can I challenge you a little bit?
You can challenge me, sure.
Okay. So if you had this kind of like mini breakthrough when you stopped drinking wine, what do you think would happen if you stopped with the cannabis?
Well, the cannabis I take for just the plethora of injuries I have from training all the time.
Okay.
I don't take a lot of medicine, but if you look at my hands, they're like everything's just broken on my body from years of combat fighting.
Huh.
So I only do it at night before bedtime. But when I do it at night, I'll spend an hour just sitting outside. I'll walk my dogs. I look at the stars. I look at the sky. Like every night, my dogs and I go for a long 1 to 2 mile walk, and I just connect. Like
I love that.
it's something I need to do. So the cannabis for me is not a distraction because it's not something I wake up and do.
Yeah. It's
It's at
actually a
the end
meditation.
of my day.
Yeah.
It's what?
It's a meditation for you.
Yes, 100%.
Some
And
people
it allows me
need
to relax.
movement to meditate, and it sounds like that's what it is for you.
Yeah, and I'm one of those guys that my brain never shuts off. So I only
Mm.
sleep about 4 hours a night on a good day, and I'll take a nap. But for the most part, like my brain is going 100% all the time, and I have to find ways to slow it down.
Wow.
Yeah,
Do
and
you
not a bad way. Like I'm not like doing dumb stuff, but like I'm just having these just deep thoughts sometimes where I can't turn it off, and I just keep going deeper and deeper into it.
Is that why you became a podcaster?
Well, no, I did the podcast. I told you with my other show, I had 500 episodes. My buddy started a podcast, and he realized that he sounded really dopey by himself. And he's like, I need someone to talk to. I'm like, fine, I'll talk to you. And then it turned into a weekly thing. And then when we first started it, it was like mixed martial arts only. That's all we talked about. Maybe a year into it, probably not even that long, we started just sharing stuff about life, and it turned into like these deep conversations about stuff guys would not normally talk about in front of other people. And we used to get the comment saying that your podcast is like being out to dinner and the table next to you is having a better conversation.
Hmm.
And then it just went from there. But it hit a point where it was the same conversation all the time. And, it got harder to schedule with COVID and stuff. And then we just never got back on track. And then I was like, you know what? I like talking to people, so I'm going to do my own thing. And then here we are having a conversation right now.
Can I ask what's your favorite part about podcasting?
My favorite part of the podcasting is meeting somebody for the first time, having an in-depth conversation with them, and even if I never see them again, I've made a friend.
Hmm.
Like there's a line in a movie I reference all the time. It's Fight Club. He's on the plane and he's talking to a stranger, and it's called basically references it as single serving friends. So you have that friend for that moment when you need them. And if you never talk again, it's okay. And if you run into that person years down the line, it's like I just saw them yesterday. That's how I work with friends.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't
So
seen
so
it in forever.
what's
You guys
what's
make
that?
me want to watch Fight Club again. I haven't seen that movie in forever.
It's good, and I actually have the soap on my desk.
Cute.
But so when you're 20 in 2021, you have some sort of incident that kind of transforms your life.
That makes it sound very dramatic. It was dramatic, but in a very different way. I had what's considered a spiritual awakening, which when you're going through it, had no idea what the fuck it was. I don't know if I can say that. I
You
have a
can
mouth
say
like,
all the fuck words you
okay.
want.
Good, because I like to drop many F-bombs. But I had no idea what the fuck was going on. It was so disorienting. It felt
Yeah.
like I was just confused. The things that I used to enjoy, I suddenly didn't enjoy. The things I used to talk about, I didn't want to talk about. I used to be so invested in like celebrity culture. I had a
Yeah.
subscription to Us Weekly for like 15 years. And then I
Okay.
was getting these magazines and I was reading it and I was like, this is such vapid bullshit.
So
Like,
like
who,
all the shit that's in the supermarket aisle while you're waiting to pay for your stuff.
right? Like, who cares who's winning an award for what or what
Right.
designer this celebrity is wearing? Like, it suddenly felt like I was seeing the world for the first time with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And I came to understand what a spiritual awakening is. It sounds very dramatic. It sounds like you're waking up. What it actually in fact is we are getting stripped down of everything
Hmm.
that we're not, everything that society has foisted upon us, or everything that like familial expectations or
Yeah.
it's basically the obfuscation of the our true self of vis-a-vis society and our family.
Yeah.
So what
I
is
find that the older I get, the less I give a shit what anyone thinks,
yes.
which is a big part of it for me. Like, I
Yes.
really don't care what someone thinks about me. It doesn't, and I treat everyone nicely. But if you like me or don't like me, I don't care. And if you don't like what comes out of my mouth, I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I wasn't always like that. I mean, there was always like that to a degree, but in the last few years, I'm even more like whatever. Like you don't affect me in any way, whoever I'm talking to.
It,
Spiritually, mentally, physically, whatever. It doesn't matter.
the older I get, the more the way my grandmother was makes a lot of sense. We used to call her like so in Yiddish it's Bobby, it means grandmother. We used to call her
Okay.
shotgun Bobby, so like the shotgun grand because she was so like she didn't care. She would just tell you what she thought about you. She had
Yeah.
no airs about her. She was totally comfortable in her own skin. She there was no fucks for her to give. And the older
Does
I
she
get, the
have
more
any abilities?
I don't know. She comes in actually a lot to me after she passed away. I had a
Okay.
very interesting experience about a week after she passed away. I remember I was driving down the street and I felt not that she was with me, but I actually felt like she was in me. And she was because she was sick for some time before she passed away. She was, bedbound. But I
Right.
actually felt like she was in me, she was with me. And that when I was driving down the street, and this is a street I drove down hundreds of times before, I felt like that day when I was driving down the street, I was seeing it with her eyes because she was with me. She was in
Mm.
me and she was seeing it for the first time, maybe in years.
So there was like a sense of familiarity that you didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah, it was, yes, it was more than that though. It was like I felt alive in a different way because I felt like
Okay.
I was seeing the street in a way that I hadn't seen it before.
Wow. And
And
and this is after the
I,
spiritual awakening that you were starting to have in
oh
2021?
no, this was, I want to say 15 years ago.
Okay.
So I
So
had
so
some
prior to,
abilities starting when I was 4, and to varying degrees, they started to come in, and to varying
yeah,
degrees, I tried to suppress them because they don't all come in at the same time. So I had
sure.
like, some the big ones came in at 4, then another set came in at about 8, then another came in when I was a teenager. So they kind of download at different times in your life.
Yeah. But are you acknowledging them as they happen, or is it when you look back on your childhood that they make more sense?
It's both because I always knew I was different. And when
Yeah,
you're a teenager, you want more than anything to fit in. Like I remember
sure.
going to a friend's house and I could tell that her parents had just had a fight. That's like a weird experience to have, but that's because I was an
Yeah.
energy reader and I was sensitive to the environment. So I could walk in and I could feel with my
Is
friend's
it
house,
like,
I could
and
their
what does it feel like? Is it like a heaviness in the air?
psyche. It almost felt like what's that? I forgot what it is. That's material that you'll find barbed wire. So imagine
Okay.
if barbed wire was an energy. That's what it felt like.
Wow.
So that's what it is to be an energy reader that is super sensitive to environment and to the energy of other
Sure.
people. Sometimes I could pick up the energy of a person, and if
Yeah.
I'm not discerning with that, I can think that what they're experiencing is what I'm feeling.
You know what's weird? You're saying the energy of a person. I never had this experience before, but about 2 months ago, I had a guy and his son come to my gym. They wanted to take like the free intro class. I was like, fine. But I had such a negative feeling to both of them. They were nice to everybody, but it was so negative that I did not want them to come back into the building.
Wow.
And, and I don't know what it was. I turned to one of the guys I train with. I'm like, I just don't have a good feeling about these two. And then when I got home, I talked to my kids. My kids knew who the kid was, and apparently he had gotten in trouble for sexual assault of a girl.
Whoa.
And I had no idea what it was, but I just had this vibe where I don't want this person anywhere near me, to the point where if they had showed up again, I was going to deny them uh, becoming members to my team, because I just the name of my gym is Good Vibes Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, by the way. And it gave me such an opposite feeling to that,
Yeah.
that I was disturbed. Like I was literally laying in bed that entire night and couldn't get past the feeling.
So imagine feeling that every time you meet somebody.
I can't, because
Yeah.
I hated it. I did not enjoy it at all. Like
Yeah.
I enjoy a positive interaction, but that was the most negative I just felt from somebody, without them ever doing anything to make me feel negative about them. It just, whatever it was, hit me like a brick.
So that's that experience of feeling people's energy. That's a gift. It's called clear sentience. It's
Okay.
where you can feel the energy of other people, but there's also, or actually, I should say it's maybe clear empathy, but there's clear sentience, which is where you can actually feel the energy of an environment. So that's like
Okay.
going into. So let's say, imagine I would go into your facility, and it would
Yeah.
have certain kind of an energy, and that energy would maybe be different than like a boxing club, or different than a church or a synagogue,
Sure.
but you can
Right.
still feel the energetic resonance that's created in it by all the people that go there.
Okay. And you're getting these vibes every time you meet someone? Is it
i
always, or is it selective when it happens to you?
I have had to teach myself how to turn it off because it's very overwhelming. um,
Right.
so for the most part, I would say at this point, and here's also the thing. Now that I do this professionally, I feel like it's unethical to
Right.
even get a sense from a person, because everybody has the expectation of privacy, and
Sure.
some people just don't know that they give off an energetic resonance, and it's
Yeah.
their fault. You know, it,
Right.
it's kind of like going into a bathroom and walking out and you have toilet paper on the bottom of your shoe.
Yeah.
It's
But
not
think
their
of
fault.
like imagine you could read minds, and
Right.
it's almost like you're intruding on somebody's thoughts at all times, even though it's just their energy that they're putting off.
It's very unethical. So and I get asked all the time when people find out I'm an energy reader. They're like, "Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Are you reading my energy right now?" No, I when I go to the grocery store, I'm not reading people's energy. The person who's ringing, bagging my groceries, I'm not reading their energy.
Right.
I think a point of actually anytime I'm reading somebody's energy, I ask their consent to let them know, and I'll only do it if I have a session scheduled with them,
Sure.
because it is unethical, but also for my own peace of mind, I have to turn it on. Like, it's kind of like having a business. I'm not going to
Right.
answer my phone when my store is closed for the day. That's what the
Yeah. And so when
for.
you get that vibe, what do you say to yourself? Like, hey, I'm off the clock right now?
If I get a vibe from a person,
Yeah.
I
If you start picking up on whatever they're putting out.
I'll block it.
Okay. How do you do that?
I use a mental exercise, so I can imagine that I have a brick wall around me.
Okay.
If this is here, I'll actually share some good tips with your any of your viewers that are very
Sure.
energetically sensitive. Um, if you are picking up funny vibes from a person and you don't like the way that they feel,
Yeah.
and you don't want their energy around you, so you can first of all imagine you're in a sphere, like you have a protective egg shape around you, and then you can coat the outside of the egg with whatever you want. So you can put like
Okay.
barbed wire around it. That's a great option. Another one is if you want to repel the energy, you can imagine
Hmm.
that your energy, the sphere that you're in, has mirrors around it. So whatever
Okay.
energy is being directed at you will actually be directed back towards that person. And
Okay.
they may not consciously be aware of what they're experiencing, but chances are they're going to feel it, and then they're not going
Yeah.
to interact with you any longer. Um, you can also imagine, like, if you're walking in a neighborhood and you have like a funky vibe about it, you can imagine that you're in, you have like a cloak of invisibility around you.
Right.
That's helpful
Just
too. Another
kind
one,
of camouflage yourself from the world.
camouflage. Another one is imagining you have pure white light around you. So that's if you're in an energy that's really gross and toxic and you
Yeah.
don't want to be permeated by it. So you imagine you have pure white light around you that's cleansing the energy.
Okay.
So all of these things I can employ at any time. A good one is imagining that there's bricks around my egg, my energetic egg,
Yeah.
so nothing can actually come in. And then there's just like a little cutout for a peephole so I can see where I'm going.
And is this something you learned on your own, or did you have a mentor in
I'm
any way that would help you through
playing
it?
around with it. Like I was telling you before, I had no idea what a spiritual awakening was. I only came to understand it because I was like Googling the weirdest things trying to figure out what was going on. So like I would
Yeah.
Google, like, I'm not depressed, but I feel depressed because I felt apathetic. And
Right.
then, like, something, I don't even know what I had put in. I put in something in a search and I was taken to like a Reddit thread. And the Reddit thread said, I had a spiritual awakening and it ruined my life. And I was like, I don't know what a spiritual awakening is, but I feel like my life is ruined. Let me read this. And then I started reading
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, okay, now I actually have a name for what I'm experiencing. Then
Right.
I started Googling, like, what is a spiritual awakening? And it's like, it's kind of like when you have weird symptoms and you go to Google to try to figure out what you have.
Yes. That's
Google tells you like you have cancer or something. So Google wasn't telling me I had cancer. I knew it was a spiritual awakening, and then I could start to read up on it, and I was like, well, this sounds very familiar.
yeah. And so when you're starting to go, like, what are some of the things that started happening to you that made you feel like you were starting to have an awakening? Like you had these abilities that you were aware of, but you suppressed them for so many years, and then all of a sudden they just start manifesting themselves, and like, hey, we're still here.
Not, yes, but the order is a little bit reversed. So what first
Okay.
happened is I lost everything that I wasn't, right? Like stripping bare,
Hmm.
losing interest in all the things that I used to be interested in, not wanting to go out because as sensitive I had been to energy before, the energy felt amplified. And it even felt now like I wasn't just feeling the energy, I was hearing the energy, which was
Okay.
something I had never experienced. Like the sun felt brighter. I don't want to go outside. So I just kind of turned within and I started meditating. And then once I started meditating, it's the floodgates lifted and all these gifts and abilities that I had tried so hard to suppress for decades just
Yeah.
started flooding in. And I was like, you know what? I tried so hard to fit in the real world by suppressing
Right.
who I am. Why don't I try to just be who I am and see what that is like?
And was that a hard leap for you to make that change? Do you change your friend group? Like, I would think a lot of things change. Like, for example, like when I quit drinking alcohol, I quickly realized who my actual friends were. Like you figure out, oh, you're the fun time guy. Now you're not drinking. You're not so much fun anymore. Let's not hang out. Or, and it's subtle. They might not say it, but do you find that the people that you found interesting before are suddenly not interesting, or the things they do are not appealing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt, oops, sorry, I had a footrest down there. I felt like there was too many things going on at one time that I couldn't ignore any longer.
Right.
One of them was the energy in the world felt different. And then there was feeling like I didn't fit in with these people any longer and
Hmm.
loving them and wanting the best for them, but also not necessarily wanting to be a friend any longer. Not that there was bad blood,
Did
but
you like disconnected,
yeah,
basically? Yeah.
yeah.
I find that a lot of people like, do you know what an NPC is? It's a character in a game. It's a non-playable character.
Yes.
I find a lot of people are non-playable characters because they just are not in tune with anything.
Yeah.
And then as I started to have my own kind of journey where I started realizing like, things are a little different. I'm thinking about life differently, thinking about my future differently. The people around me that were part of my life prior, like suddenly not that they weren't as important anymore, but I didn't feel the connection to them that I had in the past. And some of my connections got much deeper with the people I was already close with.
Yeah. So I would kind of say that's the equivalent of a vibration. Sometimes,
Hmm.
like, we don't vibe any longer with some people because we're not a vibrational, like, we're kind of like imagine the way we relate to people is like tuning our radio. Like,
Okay.
we want to listen to rock, and the rock station is 92.7. So if
Yeah.
you know the station that you want to go to, you would tune to 92.7 to listen to rock. If you want
Okay.
to pop, it's 100.3. So I would tune
Sure.
my radio to 100.3. But sometimes if we are out of alignment with our own vibration, it's kind of like tuning our radio to the wrong station. We're tuning to the
Yeah.
pop station, but we're hearing rock and we don't understand why.
Or having all the stations on at one time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think part of the spiritual awakening is it strips us away so we can get really clear on what station we actually want to tune to. And
Sure.
then when we start to ascend energetically, we're more discerning with the radio station that we're tuning to.
Hmm.
And a lot of the people that we used to turn the radio station to, we don't want to turn the radio.
Yeah. Suddenly I don't like that song anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or that kind of music.
Exactly. I think, another big thing that was happening during that time, though, because I was saying there were so many things that was happening, was I was still trying to make myself fit into a world that I don't
Yeah.
think I fit in any longer. Like, I was
Did
still
you have
trying.
a regular job? Were you like a corporate type person?
Yeah.
What was your job?
Like I was a social media marketing manager.
Okay.
I had the last, one of the last like 3D jobs, I guess you could say that I had was I worked for a fashion company. And then I was let go over COVID and I was devastated because I thought I wanted to work in fashion, even though I hated the
All right.
job. So I continued. I honestly hated the job, but
Yeah.
I was attached because I was like,
Yeah.
it's a great job on paper. Like, oh, I have a 401k. Like, I
But there's
really,
a certain level of comfortability about it as well.
yeah.
Right. And then when you get the rug pulled out from you, and the reason I'm saying this is my good friend, one of my best friends lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And I went down there last weekend to see a Billy Strings concert. And it's still devastated. And you got fires in California, you got fires in Lahaina, like there's all kinds of stuff out there. But one of the conversations I was having by the fire was like, how many people had a life that they just fucking hate? And everything is taken away from them now, like every part of it, the things they own that own them, the job that they hated. And how many people are going to go back to doing the same shit they did before, and how many people are going to take this as an opportunity to chase something that they should be chasing their entire lives and just didn't realize it or didn't want to take the chance
Yes.
because of all the things that were already part of their life. And now it's essentially what you're talking about. It's stripped down for you, but to a fucking 100th degree. Now you have an opportunity. And so many people are just going to go back to doing the same exact thing they've always done. And you recognized it for what it was, it sounds like.
Well, honestly, I also just felt like I was being redirected because no matter how many jobs I applied to, and no matter how along in the hiring process I made it, I would
Yeah.
get asked, like, I had people telling me, you're too qualified for the job. Like, why are you even applying? It's like, well, I need a job. And,
Right.
one of the biggest wake ups for me, I think, was this was kind of like at the height of COVID, and I made it to the final hiring round for a luxury watch company, and I it was a brutal interview process because I had an interview with 4 different people in the company, and then I had to put together like a mock proposal and a mock project, and I had to submit it to them. And if I have to be honest, I think the mock proposal that I had submitted was my best work. But that's besides the point. And I realized when I got to the final hiring round, I actually didn't even want the job because there was like this dichotomy where I was like,
Right.
how can I in good consciousness when I know that there are people that are, I don't know if I can say the word, they're being unalived by this virus. There are people
Yeah.
that are losing their job because of this virus. How can I, in good consciousness within my own self, want to sell somebody a $50,000 watch?
Right.
It
Yeah.
felt gross. And I just felt like I would not be able to live with myself if this was going to be my job. So when I didn't get hired, I was actually kind of happy.
It was a sense of relief,
It was
even
just
though you put your best work into your presentation.
because I think subconsciously I knew I wasn't meant to be doing it any longer.
Yeah.
But I needed the time to make them. I needed the time to kind of come to that on my own, and that's why I felt, looking back on it, I kept being redirected. It's almost like if the
Yeah.
universe has a consciousness, I felt like the universe was redirecting me, and it was saying, "This is not your door anymore. We're not opening
Right.
these doors for you." And none of these doors, no matter how many jobs you apply to, we're not opening this door because that wasn't my door any longer.
It's kind of like when you're a kid and you close your eyes and you're walking around the room looking for something and somebody's like, you're warmer, you're getting colder, you're getting colder. So you were getting pushed away from it and towards
Yes.
something else. So when you have this realization that the career path that you thought you wanted is not the career path you needed or should have, is that something that comes to you suddenly? Or is that something that kind of creeps up on you and then something lets you know? And the reason I'm asking is because I told you I've been doing the podcast and I had my idea of what my podcast was going to be. And from the instant I started my own, it was all spiritual type people, self improvement, success type coaches, all kinds of stuff. And part of me fought it. And at the end of the year, I went on Chat GPT and I said, go on, find my show and describe it to me. And it
Wow.
and it described it to me exactly what I didn't want to hear, but I knew exactly what it was going to come back with. And I said to myself, I'm like, stop fighting it, embrace it, because you're probably going to get a better part of your journey out of this by allowing yourself to talk to all these people versus having some sort of chaotic story that somebody wants to share about their Saturday night they went out drinking or something.
I think it's a little bit of both because I think what was holding me back from embracing it was trusting
Yeah,
myself and trusting that if I thought I had these gifts and abilities, that I really did. And then there's a
right.
little bit of imposter syndrome also that comes with
That
it.
was what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to really get over the imposter syndrome and I just had to say, fuck it. If I
The
know,
imposter syndrome's real though,
oh my God,
because every belt that I've gotten in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's been some sort of imposter syndrome. Like after I got my black belt, am I really a black belt?
huh,
I'm teaching people how to fight every day. Am I really good enough to teach them how to fight? And then at some point, I said to myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm better than the other people I've been around. I need to trust myself and allow myself to be the guy I am. And when people compliment me, to accept the compliment for what it is versus trying to fight it or think that I might be less than.
yes.
Yeah.
Trust. I'm also going to say, I don't think it's just, I think trust is something that we all struggle with. And I think probably more than 50% of the people that want to work with me, they actually just want the confirmation that either the
Yeah.
gifts and abilities they think they have, they do, or that they're making the right choice in their life. It's something that we really all struggle with.
Sure. Yeah.
And
I self-identity is hard for a lot of people.
it's huge.
Like, how many people have you met that say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and they're like 60 years old? Right? Like there's just so many people that have gone through their entire lives not knowing who or what they should be.
That's, I think, what the purpose of the spiritual awakening is, because it's
Yeah.
you of what you're not. So that way you're not just going to live your life on default doing
Yes.
what society tells you you should. Like I was so attached to having a good job with a 401k. In reality, it's like, do I really care? No, I wanted the job with the 401k because I wanted that my family would think I had my shit together. Do
Okay. So it was an illusion.
no. I don't
There
care.
was an illusion for your family, though, right? Like you're putting this out there where they're like, "Oh, she's got everything together. Like, you don't have to worry about her anymore."
Yes, because I'm the
Yeah.
baby in the family, and I think I always, in some way, felt like I was looked at like I was the baby. I also think, whereas my brothers seem to have their shit together so much
Hmm.
earlier on in life. They got the good jobs and really great jobs, and they have a house, and it's like
Yeah.
I'm the baby of the family.
You
So
feel like you're playing catch up all the time.
I'm like, yeah, it's like I don't have a house. I still rent an apartment, and I don't have a 401k, and they all do. And I just always felt like I had something that I had to prove to them.
Yeah.
I needed to lose that. I needed to be stripped bare of that desire in wanting to feel like I was accepted by my family.
Right. And
But
so when you don't get this job that you thought you wanted,
yeah,
it kind of makes you feel good.
I was relieved. So here, I have a
Yes.
great story to share with you that you had said people that have lost everything, how many of them have the opportunity now to start over, and how many are just going to by default go back to what they were doing?
Right.
So I have a friend who was moving and he packed up his whole apartment. Everything was packed up in the moving van. And it was like he finished packing up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't going to drive the van over to where they were moving. So they were like, we're going to park it outside and we'll drive over to the new place tomorrow. What
Somebody
was in
steal
his
it.
car? Wait, what was in his car? Camping gear. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Camping gear. So what happens? Your instincts were right. The the moving van was stolen.
With all of his possessions in it.
Everything. And he
Like,
had this epiphany when that happened. He said, none of that actually meant anything, because what actually means the most to me, why did I,
right.
of all the things, why did I put my camping gear in my car? The camping gear, because that is what he valued the most. Out of
Yeah.
everything else, he loves to go camping. And he said that it was such a big wake up call for him in realizing on a
Wow.
conscious level, why did he put the camping gear in the car? It's not even
Yeah.
going camping. Of all the things to put in the car, everything was gone. And it felt like it was such a fresh new beginning for
He's
him.
not owned anymore by his possessions.
And
And
and he
how do you
realized
think the guy who stole it felt? He's like, look at all this cool shit I got. Like I got a whole house full of stuff. Yeah.
hey, yeah.
So when he gets all of his stuff taken away, does he make a major change in his life? Does he continue to move into the house he was going to move into? Does he do anything different?
Completely transformed his life because of that experience. Actually moved out of the state because he felt so unencumbered by all of his stuff. Like he didn't feel
Yes.
like he had roots the way he had roots before. And he
Okay.
felt like free and liberated. So he finally, like, he didn't want to stay in California. He didn't want to stay in Los Angeles. He moved to a different
Right.
city. So it completely transformed his life.
Wow. And so now you're going through where you're starting to be stripped down. You don't get the job you want. You lost the job you had, but does other stuff start making its way away from you? Or are you losing other things at the same time?
Yes, anything that I was not a vibrational match for. So that's again where I would say, like, I was being more discerning with what I was tuning my radio frequency to.
Yeah.
So anything that was not a match for me and my energy started to fall away.
Okay. So was there certain things that were really noticeable right off the bat that you're like just not interested in this anymore?
Drama.
Okay. Drama from other people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not having it. I didn't want to read about it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't, and violence. Not that I live in a big city. I live in Los Angeles. Not
Sure.
to say that there's violence happening outside my window, but I was known to like watch movies before. Maybe there's some violence. I couldn't even watch any violence in any movie. And then I stopped watching movies altogether. Then I stopped watching TV. I'm at the point where I don't even turn. I have a TV. I haven't turned it on in like, I don't know, 2 years maybe.
It's interesting that you say that because when I started making changes, like if you look at my Netflix or my Amazon Prime, I have like 500 shows that I've got on my list that I was like, oh, I'm going to watch it. I haven't watched anything. I might watch an episode of something and just realize how uninterested I am in it all of a sudden. And
Yeah.
I've gotten into the habit of just doing micro learning every day where I'll go on YouTube and watch things I want to learn about. Or somebody bought me Masterclass for Christmas, which is like it's an app where you can learn all and basically anything you want from somebody who's a true professional in that field.
Yeah.
And suddenly all that stuff's important. And watching some comedy show or drama or something like that, it just doesn't interest me anymore. I can't sit down and watch it. It's crazy.
So I'm going to say that's also a really good example in your own life where you're more discerning with what you're tuning your own radio frequency to as well.
Yeah. Or I'll turn the station on for a second and I'll listen and I'm like, nah, I don't like this. And then it'll be literally me starting and stopping 20 shows within an hour and then
Wow.
getting to a point where I'm like, I don't want to watch any of this. I need to go find something else to do.
Yep. Yeah, I understand that perfectly. So that was me. That was drama. That, I couldn't even, like, I love my mother. Mom,
Yeah.
if you're watching this, I love you. I really do love my mother. But I felt like, there was like a lot of nonsense. And I didn't,
Yeah.
it was hard because it's like I want to be there for my mom and I want to
Sure.
hold space for her, but like I also don't want to hear about drama. So
No.
that was a
My
bit.
mom's the same way. Like
What is
she gets
it?
mad at me. Like if you look at her shows that she watches, it's all like crime documentaries. It's people that have traumatic things happen to them, like just the worst stuff. And you remember a couple years ago when all those I think they were either Korean or Vietnamese kids were stuck in the cave and it was raining
Yes.
and the cave was filling? My mom was glued to the television for weeks. And
Wow.
I stop over and she's like, "What about those kids?" I'm like, Mom, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have any time for those kids. She's like, you're not an empathetic person. You don't care. You have a black soul. I'm like, it's nothing to do with any of that.
Yeah.
I only have so much time in my day and I can only care about so much stuff. And unfortunately, they're on the other side of the planet and I don't have time to care about them. And then realistically, they don't care about me either. So I think we're okay. But it's that kind of thing where I don't have time for it. I don't want to listen to it. I don't even want to feel it around me.
So I would say that's, the word that I love is bandwidth. I don't have
Yeah.
bandwidth for those things.
Okay.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
drama, I don't have no, I have no bandwidth whatsoever. I had very, very limited with not attention span, desire to what I want to actually give my attention to.
Okay.
And I
And
think
then
it's like that's what
do
was
you
going
start
on.
applying it in a better way?
Yeah. So, meditation, so much, oh my God, so
Yeah.
much meditation. And then I used to love reading when I was younger. And then, somewhere along the way, my brain got hijacked where I was thinking, oh no, it's TV that's the jam. Fuck no. I turned the TV, like my TBR list is longer than I am tall at this point, and I could not be
Yeah.
happier. Like I read 88 books in 2024. My goal is 100 in 2025 because that
Oh,
is
wow.
such a better use of my time where I
Sure.
can devote myself to it. I can get lost in a whole different world and it's calming and it's soothing and it's peaceful and
You
like
can read at your own pace. There's just so many things, and the way you read a book, and somebody else might read the same book, you're going to envision something completely different
totally
in your own
different.
head. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, my bandwidth I became so much more discerning, and the relationships that I have now are so much more peaceful and like I hate this word because it's so buzzy, but like
Yeah.
authentic. Everyone's like, oh, like I want to be so authentic, but I think when we're totally stripped bare of it's like being naked.
Yes.
Like
I
being a
had a
newborn.
conversation a few weeks ago, and I said the thing that used to bother me the most is when somebody says they're being their authentic self. I'm like, that's such fucking bullshit. It's so foo-foo and woo-woo or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the more I get deeper into it, I'm like, that person's ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
They're way ahead of it. They're being exactly who they need to be and want to be, and they're not affected by anything else. And I should respect that versus thinking it's kind of weird because I wasn't being my authentic self, right? And
Yeah.
like because you just said the same thing. I was like, no, it's kind of weird. And then you meet somebody who's just pure in who they are and what they're doing, and it's like, oh, this person's tuned into something else that I need to get tuned into.
I don't like the word authentic because I feel like there's so many podcasters that say
It's
that.
overused.
Yeah, it's overused. It's so buzzy. It's so that. But you're right. When you meet somebody that's totally authentic, it
Yeah.
you feel like it's an energy that you want to be in.
True self might be a better way to say it.
Perfect way of putting it. And I think when we are our true selves, we give permission to other people to do the same because
Yes.
like, oh, hey, if they can do it and they're okay, maybe I can do it too.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you like I had these women that were on their sex therapists. They were lovely ladies. They were awesome. I had such a good time talking to them. But they do these camps and stuff like where husbands and wives would go, and they're
Wow.
like, "Do you think you would do that?" I'm like, I don't think I could." And I started thinking about it. I think what happens at those events, like people understand that they're in a group of people that are like-minded, and they allow themselves to be the way that they want to be in that environment. And that
Mhm.
starts with someone being authentic to themselves and being true to who they are, and that person picking up on it and them allowing themselves to follow that same path.
Because it feels good when we're in the energy of a person that's doing it.
Yeah, they don't feel the bullshit.
Yeah. It's an
A lot of
invitation.
people are full of bullshit.
That discerning with the radio, what am I tuning into?
Yeah.
No bullshit. No
But
bad.
you think, look at like Instagram and all these other apps, like people are trying to show a version of themselves that a lot of the time is not real. It's not who they are. And when you meet somebody who's like that, that's like it's an attraction almost, like where you see something and somebody's being and behaving the way they want to in a real way, and they're not unaffected and unencumbered by other things. It's appealing. And now when I see it, I'm like, I want to be more like that person versus the guy that's flashing whatever the $50,000 watch and saying, okay, look at me, look how much money I have.
That sentiment right there is why I did not want to work for that watch company.
No.
I
So
was
so you
held by it.
so you start having this awakening in 2021. How soon after that do you realize, okay, I need to start a business and start sharing this with others?
The idea of it becoming a business did not happen for many, many months after because I think I first needed to I I knew I had gifts and abilities, but
Sure.
I didn't know to what extent I could tap into them. So I kind of needed like a proof of concept. So I
Okay.
offered to like all of my friends, I would do a reading on them. I would do a psychic energy read.
Okay.
Let me
And how
get
does
you,
that work?
I want to know nothing. Here's the thing. One could say, if they were a skeptic, they were your friend. So you already knew them. So, of course, anything that's going to come
Yeah.
is it could be something that you would know about them. You know what we were saying before about people putting on airs and bullshit? People
Yeah.
are not necessarily going to tell you their trauma.
No.
But that's the kind of thing that I could pick up on for a person. So I said to all of my friends, I'm offering you a free energy read for honest feedback. And then I would also like to get not just feedback, but a testimonial from you in the future.
Right.
That way, if I launch a business, I have some testimonials that I can, throw up there. And then
What percentage of friends took you up on the offer?
all but one.
Okay.
Yeah. I got some really, really good practice. And then some of the people started to tell me, you know what? I think a friend of mine would actually benefit from this. Can I connect you with them? So
Yeah.
the real proof of concept started when I was doing completely blind reads on people that had been referred to me,
Yeah.
or friends of friends, and then I started to just reach out to like acquaintances on Instagram, people
Sure.
I didn't know at all, and I was like, I'm just kind of playing around with my gifts and abilities, and I would mostly like reach out to people that were already open-minded to it. So like astrologers,
Right.
um, people that were kind of like already tuned into esoteric or metaphysical
Sure.
properties. So I would just offer like free readings to them. And the feedback I was getting from people was like, there's no way you could know that about me. This
Now, is
I
it easier for you to get a reading off of somebody who's open to it versus somebody who's closed off?
The best readings I have had are from people that are genuinely excited and are
Okay.
not blocking themselves. And I actually got really good advice from somebody. They said to me, "You have to make your prices higher." And I said, "Why? I want people to book with me." And they're like, "No, you're going to get the looky-loos. You're going to get the people that are curious.
Yeah.
You have to make the price higher because then you're going to get
$10 reading, I'll just throw $10 out there, right? If
exactly."
you're $1,000, I'm like, I'm gonna rethink that. I'm like, do I really need this?
And my readings are not 1,000, but
No, but
but it has to be at a certain price point where people were actually going to think about it before they book. Because then
yeah,
it's not going to be a curiosity. Then it's going to be they're invested.
they have intent.
Yes. And by far, those are the best readings when the person is really, really open to it and they're really excited about it.
All
If
right.
it's usually word of mouth, it's a people whose friend told them this person is unbelievable. They're really going to help you.
And do you find that some people have immediate changes in their life? Is there something that's been weighing them down like an anchor their entire life, and then they can put their finger on it finally, and now they can make a change? Or is it? I'm assuming you run into all different types of conversations with this, but I would think that there's people that you know they're searching for something and they just can't quite see it, and
So
then you're there to kind of help them through the door to see the next part.
it depends. Some people feel stuck in their life and they don't know what's making them stuck. So they want to
Yeah,
unstick themselves. Some people, like I was telling you before, they just need like validation. They think that they are
sure.
gifted, but they want to know from somebody if they are gifted and how to welcome in and how to work with their gifts.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my favorite readings that I offer is something called a cord cutting. And that is, in my opinion, one of the most transformative readings that I can offer a person because it's actually a guided meditation. It's not
Okay.
reading at all. So it's taking a person in their mind's eye to either, it could be anything that they are connected to, consciously, usually, but even if they're not familiar with what it is, I'll do a consultation with them first and we'll kind of
Mm-hmm.
like really tuned into it.
I took all the stickers off my 4x4.
Oh, that's cool.
Hey,
My little one is obsessed with Rubik's
and
Cube.
I said I was
Oh, nice.
Rubik's Cube the
Bring it in, but don't show your face.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
4x4
Yeah,
one.
yeah, good luck with that. I was always the kid that would take it apart and put it back together with the colors in the right spot.
I can
Wait,
solve.
literally, you would take it apart?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
when I was a kid,
It's
because
possible?
yeah, it's possible, but because I would hit the point where I'm like, I can't do this.
Wait,
I know he's mine because I delivered him. I don't know where he gets this from because it's not me. I don't have the head for that. I'm all airy fairy. Like numbers, math, it's too concrete.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with numbers.
I can solve a side on this. I'm gonna solve a side.
Okay, you can, while you're solving, you can listen to the story that I'm going to share, okay? So I was telling you about cord cutting because it's bringing a person in their mind's eye to either a relationship that they, it's not solved yet. You got to solve the
I
whole
suck
thing.
at solve though.
That it is notable.
I did solve one side.
All right, now solve the whole thing, okay?
I
Well,
can't.
oh, well, boo.
Solve a side. I can probably.
It's real life over here. Like this happens
Yeah.
when I'm recording for my YouTube channel as well. Before, I think you heard like there was a ton of noise. That was my neighbor taking out the garbage. Like it's real life.
Yeah, it's no worries.
But so this cord cutting, it's taking people to, in their mind's eye, to see either a person that they still feel connected to. It could be somebody
Right.
they're divorced or they just went through a breakup and they can't get over this person, or it's a self-limiting belief that they have. Usually, the self-limiting beliefs that people are coming to me with pertain to money.
Yeah.
But it's bringing them to see what the attachment looks like and then getting them to disconnect from it. It's
Okay.
one of the most powerful sessions that I can offer. And I would honestly tell you that is probably the number one that when I do it with a person, they can start to make leaps and bounds in their life. But
Do you find it's more effective with somebody who's got a lingering relationship that they haven't quite finished in their mind and the other person's already moved on?
it's could be anything. It's any level of
Yeah.
attachment. So it's
Okay.
attachment to money. It could be attachment to food. It could be attachment to a person, a belief, a self-limiting belief.
Right.
But also part of it, what makes it so powerful is we're not just severing the connection, but we're replacing that severed connection with something that's positive. So if a person is having trouble getting over a relationship, it's
Mm-hmm.
not just where we're severing the connection, because that could be, really disorientating for a person. Like they
Sure.
only know themselves in conjunction to who they were in a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's also replacing the association that they had about themselves with something that's positive that can actually create long lasting change in their life.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have some friends that no matter who they date, they kind of morph into whatever that person wants them to be.
Oof.
And then when the relationship doesn't work out, they're kind of lost for a while. And that's always hard to watch. Like I have a guy I train with, his name's Anthony. He's basically a nephew to me. He was in love with this girl a few years ago and they broke up. And he's the one who broke up with her. And she's moved on and now he realizes how much he loves her. And this is like 5 years later.
Wow.
I'm like, she's not even the same person. Like, think about how much you've changed in 5 years. She's not the same person. So the person you're in love with is no longer in existence. She's turned into something else. You may still like the new version, but the one you're attached to is just not there anymore. And you need to find a way to move on. And I don't know if he has or hasn't yet, but it's one of those things where it's holding him back
Yep.
from having a new relationship with somebody who might make him way happier than that person ever would.
In a case like that, at least in my experience, what I have found with people like that, there is some unresolved trauma in their life that's not allowing them, or maybe allowing is the wrong word. It's not empowering them or enabling them to show up as they are in a relationship. So it might actually have
Yeah,
to do with but maybe not properly like bonding to a caregiver when they were a child.
possibly.
So it's maybe something to do with like the attachment that they had in their formative years. And it could be
Okay.
something that they're not even conscious of. But, when I'm doing a session with a person, I can actually see that because trauma shows up in our body. So
Yeah.
as an energy reader, I can look at the person's aura and I can see, is there a delineation where the aura is not actually completely intact?
And when you're starting to have this conversation, do they tell you what their issue is, or are you figuring it out along the way?
I'm sorry, could you ask the question again?
When you start the session, is there a clear cut path of what you're trying to get them around, or does sometimes something else present itself and you find that along the way and they realize that that is the thing and it's not the thing that seems so obvious?
That's a great question. So before I go into a session, I'll ask the person. I have like, let's say 10 different readings on my website. So I'll say, why did you want this particular one? And if they know what it is that they want to overcome, that's what
Hmm.
we'll focus on. Sometimes they'll say, I don't know why I chose this one. This is just what I felt called to. I don't have any agenda. I just want you to do a read and tell me whatever it is that you see. But sometimes
Yeah.
they'll book it with the intention of saying, I want a complete comprehensive overview. I want to know everything that it is that you see. I have some idea of what I want to talk to you about, but let's start with whatever it is that's going to come in first.
Okay. And then how long is the session and how soon into it do you start discovering what that is it something immediate or is it different for every person?
So sessions can be anywhere from like an hour to 90 minutes. And pretty much the way that it works is we'll have like a short 5-minute dialogue.
Yeah.
What is it that they hope to get out of it? Are they coming in with an idea of what they want to work on or no idea? Then I will ask for their consent to connect to and to read their energy. After I
Hmm.
have their consent, I set an intention that all information that comes in is for their highest good. And then I just sit back, I close my eyes, and the information starts to come in. And whatever comes in, I start to share it with them.
Wow. And is there times where somebody like what's coming into your head, you're like question sharing it, or is it whatever it is, it's coming out?
That's a really good question also. So when I'm connected to somebody's energy, whatever is coming in, it's not for me to make sense of because it's not my energy that I'm reading at that point. It's their energy.
Right.
So whatever comes in, I'll share with them what I see. And then I have found that 9 times out of 10, they know immediately what I'm talking about. In the event that they don't, I'll continue to share. And then probably about 2 to 3 minutes later, it becomes evident what it is. Because sometimes, energy, it's different for every person. Sometimes what seeing can be a color, it can be an emotion, it can be a scene from a movie. It can be a memory that a person has had. And again, this is why I don't try to make sense of it, because I was doing a session with a person and I said, I'm seeing a little girl standing outside of a grocery store and she's sucking on a lollipop. And I described what she was wearing, and she had like the certain kind of barrette in her hair. And she said, that's me. She said, that is me. That happened when I was 7 years old. So when I'm tuned into somebody's energy, I can be picking up on memories that they have had. So
now, are they speaking at the same time, or are they just sitting there and
no, they're so it depends. Sometimes, like, I'll share with, like, in the case of the girl with the lollipop, I told her what I was seeing, and she's like, you're seeing me. That was me.
Wow.
Sometimes they'll ask questions, or sometimes they'll say, I think I know what you're talking about, but keep going.
Okay.
Every session is completely different because the expectations that a person has is completely different, and what they're hoping to get out of it is completely different. But typically,
it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
What comes in, it's usually something. If it's like a scene from a movie, it's coming in a way for me to make sense of it, so that way when I share it with them, I have some idea of what it is.
Okay.
Like, I'm trying to think of like a good example. I can't think of any. Of course, I can't think of anything right now. Like, I feel like I'm on the spot.
Are these sessions videotaped?
No. And in fact, people are always surprised that I don't want to do video sessions. They're all phone calls. And I tell them the reason that I do that is I don't want to be influenced. Because like, if I'm looking at a person, or I see their house and it's, it's a fucking hot mess, or like it's really a nice decoration, it can influence a person. So the less I know, the better it is. I don't want to be influenced by anything. That's why, I was saying, like, when I was doing the readings for like a friend of a friend, those were insane readings, because I was going in completely blind to the person. And it was actually also the most, I would say, validating that the gifts and abilities that I thought I had, I really did have. Because this is something
because it's not something you could pretend to be good at.
Yeah.
So when you're having somebody on and you're having a session, you've never met them before. Like, they've contacted you, and you're hopping on a phone call, and then stuff just starts happening.
Yep.
That's amazing. And do you? And obviously, these people they're willing to pay whatever the price is because they understand the value they're going to get out of it. So you're getting someone who actually is interested and believes in what's about the conversation that's taking place, and they're more open to you for you to be able to read them.
Yes.
And are they taking notes? Like, what? How are they keeping track of everything that's happening in the conversation?
So I do recommend that they take notes, because the thing about energy is it's fluid. One of the wildest experiences I had is a friend of a friend had reached out to me. It was somebody that I really didn't know before. And he had reached out to me about 6 months later. And he said to me, do you remember in the reading that we had, you saw me sitting in the desert and writing letters to people? And I said, no. Because here's the thing, I don't retain, the information is not for me, it's for them. I don't retain any of it. Like, I might remember the overarching theme of a session, but like the minutia, no.
Right, but there's no need for you to carry that other person's emotions or thoughts or feelings with you after the initial conversation.
It's too much. I kind of look at it like I'm the conduit of I'm like the telephone wire that connects the telephone to the wall. I'm just a conduit for the information to pass through.
You're the old school telephone operator that's just doing the plugs and putting them everywhere.
The young generation will never know. But yeah, that's essentially what I am. So he had said to me, well, you won't believe where I am. He said, I'm in the desert. He wasn't like sitting literally in the desert, but he had like gone to Palm Desert for the weekend. He was sitting in a hotel room and he was writing letters to people. And while he was doing it, he said he had such a sense of deja vu. So he went to the notes in his phone and he read through the session. And in the session, it's
Wow.
sitting in the desert writing letters to people.
Are,
And he was
are
having
deja vu moments common with the things that you do and the conversations you have?
very,
Yeah.
because energy is completely fluid. I could be seeing a memory, I could be seeing somebody's past, I can also be seeing a potential future for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's beliefs that everything is happening at once,
It
depending
is.
on how you think of things. So you could have past, present, future at the same time. And
Can
you
I
have
share
different.
the way it's been
Yeah, go
shown?
ahead.
Okay. I love this. It's so trippy. Okay, so I'm a visual person. I learn visually. So I'm going to take one of my bracelets and I'm going to show it to you. So
Okay.
this is a beaded bracelet. It has all of these different beads on it, right?
Yep.
So the way that our lives work, or the way that we think it works, is it happens linear. And for
Mhm.
people that believe in reincarnation, they believe our past lives have happened in the past. We have our
Sure.
current life that's happening now, and then we have future lives that'll happen at some point in the future.
Right.
The way that it actually works is all of our lives are happening simultaneously. They're like beads on a bracelet.
Yeah.
So or look at it this way, because that might be a little nebulous. Imagine a ring on Saturn. So imagine this is
Mhm.
one of Saturn's rings. Okay, I'm going to put it back on my hand now.
Okay.
So this could be my current life right here. Okay,
Right.
so imagine my hand is still in the bracelet. This is my current life.
Sure.
So there's a life that's happening over here and I can't see it, but it's happening at the same time because it's on the same bracelet. It's just obfuscated by Saturn being in the middle of it.
Well, it's the conversation I had with the gentleman about the tree
There you go.
being the same and all the leaves being the other lives happening at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's literally the way that it works. But we are veiled. And that's what I always talk about on my YouTube channel is I always say that one of my gifts and abilities is seeing beyond the veil. We are
Right.
veiled because we're not meant to remember. Like imagine, so I have a kid, right? Imagine if in a past life I had a romantic relationship with my kid. We're not meant
Right.
to know that.
No. And that's where
Imagine
the soul of families come together and the soul groups.
exactly. Right.
Right. Because I've had conversations with I had a woman on who was haunted by a ghost. She realized the ghost was her from a previous life.
Oh
And the
no.
guy she was dating at the time was the captain of the ship that she came over on when she was a child. And her daughter was her mother at the time. And it was all over the place. And it was very interesting. And, you know, it's that part where your souls are connected, but that person might be a different version of whatever they are every time.
That's right. A better example, I think, is imagine in a past life you had a romantic relationship with one of your parents. Like that, if people remembered that, that shit would fuck
It'd be
us.
horrifying.
We are not meant to remember that.
Yes, I do not want to remember that if that was a
Right?
thing.
Like you can't even think about your parents having sex.
No.
So no, that's why our memory is wiped in between our lifetimes, but that's typically why we will come back. Like what you were sharing with the soul group, it's certain souls that we have some shit that we're still going to work through some things.
Yeah.
We just come back in different configurations from one lifetime to the next.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we talked about was the fact that, you know, each lifetime you're going to go through something different. And I was likening it to the multiverse where, you know, we're all in the same levels. We're just inserted at different places to learn different things.
Yes.
And when you learn them, you go to the next spot and you're going to learn something different there. You might not remember. And it's the reason some people have old souls versus somebody who has a young soul. Like somebody who has an old soul has already been through a lot of those levels. Even if they don't remember what it is, they still have a connection to it. And some things make more sense to them in certain environments and situations than somebody who's got a young soul. And, you know, and so I'm all over the place with that as well right now. And it's interesting to me that the deja vu part, like we were talking about in a second, that happens to me on a regular basis. And a lot of the times I've gotten really good at acknowledging when it's happening and saying, okay, this is the choice I'm supposed to make because that's the one I made there, and that's how it worked out. So yeah, it happens to me.
I'm going to take it a step further also, and I'm going to say, so Earth is it's kind of like a school, right? It's where we
Yeah.
come to have experiences we're not necessarily going to have anywhere else, but we're not disempowered when we come here. We are so fully empowered to the extent
Right.
that we are designing prior to us even being born. We are the cosmic creator of the life we're going to have. We're designing
Yes.
the experiences. So it's not to say we don't have free will. We absolutely do in the day to day. Like
Right.
when I was getting ready to come sit down with you, I put on this green sweater. But one could say the big overarching, the big themes in our life, the big shit that we've gone through, that is stuff
Yeah.
that we wrote into the script of our life before we were born. So like
Yeah.
in this lifetime, I decided I was going to wake up and I was going to be an energy reader.
Right.
How it happened, maybe that was part of the free will. But the big lesson, me deciding to have a child or me going through
Sure.
a divorce or things like that, all of that, I wrote that in for myself.
Yeah. And so, and do you mind if I touch on the divorce for a second? Was that
Sure.
after the awakening where you realized, okay, this isn't the person I need to be with, or prior? Okay.
It was prior. I
Gotcha.
also don't think that I would have woken up if not for it, because I think that's part of the stripping bare. It's really
Yeah.
hard to lose everything. Like my friend who had his entire life stolen in a moving truck.
Right.
Sometimes the things that really unencumber us are the things that lead to the biggest growth in our life. And again, that's why we write it in for ourselves, because we're the
Yeah.
writer of our life experiences.
But to your point where you show up here and you have whatever abilities, like they're almost taught to us to ignore them and push them out of the way. Right? Like how many times have you met a kid with such a big personality and their parents just whatever reason don't want that kid to be that way because either it embarrasses them or whatever.
Yep.
And they try to change that kid. And that kid spends a lifetime just suppressing who they are.
Yep.
And eventually they figure it out and then they become bigger than life like they should have been their entire lives. Like my kids, like one of my sons asked me a few years ago, he's, what should I be when I grow up? Like, whatever the fuck you want to be. Like, don't do what I tell you to do. You figure out what you want to do. And I think a lot of parents spend their lifetimes telling kids like, okay, you need to do this, this, and this. Like, for example, I'm sure I'm a little bit older than you, but when I was a kid, my parents said, grow up, get a good job, get married, and that's it.
Mm.
That was the extent of the life advice. And as I get older, I'm realizing I missed out on a lot of these little things that I'm picking up on now that I'm on my own kind of a spiritual journey. I'm realizing, okay, I missed this over here. I missed this over here. This makes more sense now. And we push that out of people. So when you come into the world and you have whatever skills or abilities like you did, and you don't want the world to judge you and you don't want people to think a certain way about you, so you find a way to blend in.
Yeah.
And eventually you hit a point where you just can't blend in anymore. And you just got, and you either embrace it or you be miserable about it. And you seem like somebody who's embraced it and actually loves who they are now versus who you were then.
I was so miserably unhappy before.
Did you know why?
No.
Okay.
I had no idea. It's not to say that, my whole life before this was not meaningful. It's just
Sure.
to say that I knew something was missing. Here's the thing. I also always knew I was weird. I was always different than everybody else.
Yeah. Is it weird though?
No.
Right.
But when you're young, that's the way
It's
that we
weird.
associate it, right?
Yeah, you're perceived that way.
I always knew that I was different, and I
Yeah.
didn't know why. And it was, until I knew why. But I just wanted more than anything to fit in. So it was
Sure.
me suppressing myself because I wanted more than anything to fit in. But here's the thing, the people that I think don't fit in, it's because we're not meant to. We just don't know
Mhm.
them. And here's also the thing, biologically, we're all hardwired to fit in, because you go back thousands of years to when we were hunters and gatherers. If you
Mhm.
didn't have a tribe, you would starve and you would die.
Yeah.
So we're hardwired to want to fit in exactly. We're hardwired to want to fit in, tribal behavior. We're hardwired to want to fit in and belong to
Right.
Yeah, we're hardwired to use tribal behaviors, like I just said.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
But think about like even like cavemen. There was always one guy who was probably a little different, like Grog over in the corner who's talking to the animals, right? Like they're like, okay, he's different, but he probably still tried to find a way to fit in at the time.
And he was probably highly gifted.
Yeah. So once you find a way to release who you actually are, does life changes and you feel a tremendous sense of joy at the things you do now versus who you were then?
Yeah. Look, it's not to say that every day is rainbows, butterflies, and
Sure.
unicorns, because that's not fucking realistic.
Right.
Like, it's still life. Like, we still have real life obligations. So it's not like
Yeah.
I'm like some guru sitting on a mountaintop meditating 24 hours a day and I don't have real life concerns. I do. I have freelance jobs and I don't always like all of them, but they're necessary because, real life, I got to put a roof over my
Yeah.
head.
There's bills to pay. There's a kid with a Rubik's Cube that needs to eat.
He needs a lot of Rubik's Cubes. He needs a lot of food. So
Yeah.
it's real life that's happening. So it's not to say that when we embrace what we came to be, it dissolves all other things. It's just to say that the way that I live my life now is so much more aligned with what I think I came
Yeah.
here to be. And I wasn't meant to fit in before. And I'm so much happier now that I know that, because
Right.
I don't try to fit in. Now I'm okay being the weird person.
No. And do you find now that you connect more with people like yourself, like randomly? Like I feel like you probably attract a lot more people that are more like you now that you are just being yourself.
So again, it goes back to vibration, right? So
Yeah.
like what vibration am I transmitting? That lines me up with similar vibrations.
Yeah. And then you attract what you are attracted to and same vice versa.
So I always liken energy to a boomerang. Whatever you put
Yeah.
out, it's going to come right back to you. But it's not to say, a lot of people say like, well, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
It's kind of an oversimplification. It's more to say what it is that we are
Yeah.
putting out into the world, and that is what is coming back to us. So it's the energy that's the boomerang that comes back
Yeah.
to us.
And it's interesting because I have that conversation with new students at my gym all the time. Because you have guys that have been training for years. Like I have 40,000 plus practice matches against people.
Wow.
And somebody will come in and they'll be like, "Oh, I thought I was going to do better or whatever was going to happen." And they'll try to ramp it up. And I'm like, no matter what you do, it's not going to change the outcome. What you're going to do is you're going to make me go harder on you, and you're not going to like that outcome. And it's real time. So like if you give me whatever energy, I'm gonna match it, and I'm probably going to overwhelm whatever your energy is. And I have that conversations with people all the time. I'll say, hey, you're going to go with Joe over here. Joe's been training a while. Keep in mind, he's very experienced, and if you go nuts, he's going to settle you down. And if you just accept what's about to happen to you, he's going to make sure you don't get hurt, and he's going to make sure you're going to learn from this versus get injured. And there's two ways to look at this. Like it's not a championship match. You're here to learn. And if you take a minute and just absorb what's coming your way and not get in your own way, things will work out better. Because a lot of people want to throw that like, hey, they have this mindset like, oh, I'm whatever. Like, oh, I've never lost a fight. I hear that all the time in my classes. Like, all right, you never fought anybody. Stop. Right. But it's that same thing, but on a different kind of course. Like the energy you put out, a lot of time is what you get back. And if you're putting out the right energy, you're getting the right stuff back.
Yes, exactly. It's a boomerang.
Yes. And so moving forward with your company, it's Solar Flow.
Mm-hmm.
And what types of things can people reach out to you? Because we've been on for an hour and a half. I could probably talk to you for hours.
Same.
And honestly, we're going to have more conversations down the road because I feel like we have a bit of a connection here. So when somebody visits your website, like what are some of the things that they can reach out to you for that you can assist them with?
So I think right now I have about 10 different readings. So there's the signature, which is a little bit of everything. It's the most comprehensive. That's where we could look a little bit at past lives. a little bit at their aura, their energy, trauma that they might have. It's not quite as detailed or focused as some of the other ones, but it's the most comprehensive because we look at a little bit of everything. But then I do the cord cutting, which is one of my favorite ones. I can also look at a person's vibration. So again, like what are they tuning their radio tuner to? And see what misalignments that there might be and how we can get them to redirect their vibration a little bit more focused and conscientiously. I also have a fantastic past life one because there's something called the Akashic Records, which is kind of like a library. And the library has books of every life that a person has had.
And what is it called?
The Akashic Records.
Okay.
So
I'm going to look that up when we get off.
It's so cool. By the way, and in meditation, it was shown to me what it looks like. This is some badass library. That's all I can say. But I can access with the person's name all of their other past lifetimes. So I can see what might be something that happened notable in a past life that is actually pertaining to something coming up in this life for them.
That they've carried with them.
Yes.
Okay. Another
one is gift confirmation and guidance. So it's if somebody thinks that they're gifted, and if they think they are, or they just want confirmation that they are. So it's looking, I can access, let's say, their entire auric field, and I can see what's lit up. And depending on what is lit up, it will tell me what one of their gifts and abilities are. And then once I can share with them what it is, I can tell them how they may be blocking it and what they can do to nurture that gift and ability from coming in a little bit strongly. Yeah, I have good sessions.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. Like aside from the part that you're helping people learn about themselves, it sounds like it's like taking a different route to work every day.
It is so fun. It is, and I'm going to offer you. So every person that interviews me, I like to offer them a complimentary session.
Yeah, why not?
I think you would. I mean, if you are already open to this kind of stuff, you will love it.
Yeah, I'm 100% interested. You just let me know when you want to do it.
It's happening. I'm so excited about this.
Awesome. So what's your website? What's your Instagram? Where can people find you? And then we'll wrap up and then we'll have a conversation after.
That sounds amazing. So it's Solar Flow, but it's not spelled solar like the sun. It's actually solar like soul. So it's SOULAR flow. And I'd actually like to share where the name came from if I can, because I think it's so, okay, I know I'm biased, but I think it's beautiful. But what was shown to me once in meditation was we are so connected to the cosmos. Some of us literally come from it. We're star seeds. But when our soul recognizes our connection to the cosmos, we can flow in harmony with universal energy. So that's why it's solar, like solar power, but soul flow, solar flow. And that's my website. It's also the name of my YouTube channel. And you checked out my YouTube channel. It's my baby. Yeah. I love it. I love every topic that I look into. It's so much fun. And I think it's very insightful for people that are interested in these kind of topics because we do explore some metaphysical, we do explore reincarnation, but I also do energy reads on celebrities and true crime and what is the behind the veil motivating factor for crimes. I think my YouTube channel is wild.
It is interesting. I was on there. I watched the Mark Zuckerberg one, and I can't remember who the other one was I watched, but I checked out a few. So definitely cool, and I think people should check it out. And I would love to have some more future conversations with you. And just real quick, I have a tattoo on my. I have a bunch of tattoos. I have like 22 tattoos, but I have one across my chest in Portuguese that says "Flow and Evolve." It's Flor ever Lore, and it's big. And every time I look at it in the mirror, it just reminds me to just continue doing whatever I'm doing. Yeah. So hang on one sec, okay?
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up. Hang on one sec. Oh, no. Man.
Can you hand me my water, please?